The first official trailer for Superman is now available. James Gunn released the trailer on the internet, and in this video, I will present a frame-by-frame analysis, exploring all the details so that we can discover everything about the Superman film and also about this new DC universe that is being formed. There are hidden details and references to the comics that you will only notice by watching this video until the end. So, without further ado, let's get to the video. In the last video analyzing the cover of the new Superman film, which if you haven't seen it, watch it there. It was very good, so watch it. I commented on the villains that could be in this new phase of Superman, and to our surprise, yes, it will be Lex Luthor is once again the villain of this film. But sis, we have some surprises like Dr. Incredible and the Shapeshifter. In this teaser, we note that the film's soundtrack will be, in large part, a reinterpretation of John Williams' classic score, present in Superman 78, but now played by a guitar in a rock arrangement that also moves. The soundtrack was one of the points that impacted me the most in the trailer, as it's basically the only thing we have, as there is almost no dialogue. The only sounds we hear are Superman calling out to Krypto and when a little boy calls out to Superman, but we'll get to that. Now, let's start our in-depth analysis of the trailer. The first scene of the trailer features a frame in the Arctic, where Superman has built the Fortress of Solitude. In this first frame, I remember the scene from Man of Steel, where we see Clark flying for the first time as Superman, but it's exactly the opposite. Instead of flying, Superman is falling through the ice, opening a crater, all bruised and bloody, as if he had fled a fight for his life. He has blood coming out of his mouth, his face is all purple, and that made me a little sad, because the first image we have of Superman in this DC universe is of him busted up. This raises curiosity. Who did he get hurt by to end up like this? As we move forward, we notice him falling and some scenes from his daily life appear, somewhat randomly. The first is of him walking down the street, arriving at the Daily Planet as if he was late, with the look of Clark Kent, which is very different from Superman, clear and Messier hair. This appearance helps to disguise it a lot, along with the glasses. At this moment, we observe the facade of Planeta Diario, which reminds us a lot of comic books. In the Man of Steel version, the planet looked more like a normal business office, but in this film, they made a point of including a large planet logo at the entrance, very golden. The costumes also draw attention, as everything is very cartoonish. We see a police officer wearing a hat that the police no longer use, something very reminiscent of the comics, but adapted for live action. We watch Clark enter the Daily Planet, tripping and bumping into people. Later, in the Arctic, we see more closely that his face is badly bruised, indicating that the scenes we are seeing throughout the trailer appear to be important memories for him in his life. We see more of the interior of Planeta Diario with an open shot, showing that the aesthetics inside are very similar to the comics. We observed a gigantic globe and a well-lit environment with journalists working. Despite having this more retro aesthetic, going back to the 70s and 80s, we easily realize that the story takes place in the present day, given technologies such as LCD screens, which would be different from old tube monitors. James Gunn, aesthetically, chose to mix elements from different eras to refer to the classic and make this universe somewhat fantasy and, at the same time, contemporary. Rachel Brosnahan's first scene as Lois Lane shows her confident and secure in her job. Clark, upon arriving, stumbles again and looks at her awkwardly, which reinforces the classic Clark Kent we see in the comics. It's an interaction that, despite not having dialogue, is very significant. After that, we have a frame of the Kent farm where we not only see the classic barn, but also the house where Clark lives with his parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, with some cows grazing. The aesthetics of the farm reminded me a lot of the series Smallville. In a touching scene, although without dialogue, we see Clark, possibly younger, hugging Jonathan Kent, a beautiful scene that reflects the love and affection between them. We then return to the moment where Clark is lying on the ice. He remembers the important things in his life, and then starts to whistle. This leads us to see Krypto running back on the ice, indicating that he was calling for help. In this film, he is not alone like in previous versions, as he has Krypto by his side. He asks Krypto to take him home, and at this moment, we realize that Krypto is not like the animations in which he speaks. Instead, he's just a super-powered dog. After that, we see an explosion in the city, where Superman rushes to save a little girl. What pleased me was Superman's interaction with children, something we didn't see much of. In an interview, James Gunn mentioned that David Corenswet, the actor who plays Superman, convinced him to keep his underwear over his pants in this film. The intention is to make children not afraid of Superman and trust him, even reflecting the style of the fighters, with colorful clothes and underwear on the outside. This goes back a little to the origins of Superman, created in 1938, with inspiration from circus weightlifters. After this explosion scene, we get our first look at Lex Luthor. He is high above Luthor Corp, watching Superman fly and clearly expressing his contempt. James Gunn explained that, in this universe, Superman and Lex Luthor do not yet know each other directly, but Luthor harbors a deep hatred for Superman. The film's story revolves around Superman, Lex Luthor, and Lois Lane. The trailer scenes reveal that many of the problems that Superman will face could be caused by Lex Luthor, which is a point that is very clear. We see Lex in a scene where he watches Superman fly, another showing the facade of Luthor Corp with a beautiful logo and confirmation that Lex is the boss. He looks very different from the character we saw in Man of Steel, where he was just a kid. Here, he takes on a leadership role. There is a powerful scene where we see Lex walking with a gun in his hand, appearing to threaten someone within the company, which highlights his emotional instability. Another scene shows Lex watching a television where he sees the little boy trusting Superman to save him. Lex is hurt, showing his anger and hatred. We then watch Superman trapped in a glass box, appearing to accumulate the strength to break the prison. The environment resembles that of Luthor Corp, which denotes that he is actually fighting Lex Luthor. After the explosion scene in which we see Clark throwing the punch, it is important to mention an impactful sequence that portrays a crowd fleeing from imminent danger, and in the midst of this chaos, there is a little boy raising a flag with the Superman symbol. This scene shows how Superman will connect with children, unlike adult audiences who distrust him. After this, we see Superman crossing the city, facing the wrath of the population, who seem to be revolted against him. He enters a building where the police officer needs to contain the angry crowd. From there, we get the first look at Guy Gardner as Green Lantern, making use of his ring to keep the crowd at bay. I believe that Superman may be in conflict with a kaiju that appears later in the trailer, and that, in my opinion, causes significant damage to the city, which hurts its reputation. He may be responsible for the destruction in Metropolis, fomenting the population's hatred and fear. Lex Luthor may have his hands behind this kaiju, as we know he dabbles in genetic engineering in the comic books. Finishing the trailer analysis, we have a series of comic book moments. Travel, disasters, and the population's doubts about Superman. The hope now is that Superman will be able to return to his heroic and captivating figure, regaining the trust of people who, in turn, still need to believe in him. After several quick scenes, we have a beautiful sequence where Clark and Lois kiss, and then the final scene shows Superman flying with confidence, ending with the DC Studios logo. I'm looking forward to watching this film, and from what I've seen, the trailer is a promising opening for a new beginning in the DC universe. I want to know what you think. Leave your comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more content.